Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The Uniform Civil Code that has for long been part of election rhetoric in India is all set to become reality in the small hills state of Uttarakhand. A special 4-day assembly session is currently underway in Dehradun, and by the time it ends, Uttarakhand will become the first state in independent India to adopt a uniform civil code. Yes, there is Goa, but that is a story for another time. Coming back to Uttarakhand. The 800-page Uniform Civil Code draft makes for very interesting reading. There are things that make a lot of sense, like equal inheritance for men and women. And then there are things that are debatable, like why are scheduled tribes out of the ambit of the UCC? After all, the whole point of a Uniform Civil Code is that it is uniform, that it applies to everyone. In that case, why are you leaving the tribals out? The other mind-boggler is the set of laws that will govern live-in relationships. Now, ladies and gentlemen, registering a marriage is one thing. But why should a couple be forced to register a live-in relationship and then register a breakup as well? Is this a safety tool for women, as the government is claiming, or is this a surveillance tool in the times of what the government calls love jihad? Before I start, let's quickly take a look at how Uttarakhand's UCC draft seeks to regulate live-in relations. First and foremost, if you're a couple that decides to live together, you don't want to get married, you will have to register yourself with the government. The registrar of the area then has to determine if that relationship is kosher, which means that both partners are single, both are adults, and this is not a prohibited relationship, which means you can't have a situation where an uncle is living in with his niece. Then, if there is a breakup, again, the registrar has to be informed. If you don't register the relationship or the breakup, you face a jail term of 3 to 6 months and a fine of up to 25,000 rupees, between 10 and 25,000 rupees. There is a redeeming factor here, a redeeming point, as it were, in these regulations. A child born in a live-in relationship will be considered legitimate under law, which is a good thing. The code also has provisions for maintenance in case of a breakup. Now, interestingly, these rules, in fact, the entire UCC, applies not just to residents of Uttarakhand, but to natives of Uttarakhand who are living outside the state. Now, that does sound like a big nosy state that wants to know everything you do. Okay, we understand that a marriage needs to be registered for various reasons. But why should a live-in relationship or a breakup be registered? The two are different things. Has the government of Uttarakhand forgotten that, or is this simply a way to discourage young couples from living in? Why is it that you need parental consent for a live-in relationship if you're under 21? After all, the government of India thinks of you as an adult at 18 and allows you the right to vote. So you can vote, but without mummy papa saying yes, you cannot be in a live-in relationship. What logic is that? So the question is this surveillance? Is this moral policing? Or is it simply a tool to provide some degree of protection to women in live-in relationships? We'll talk about that. First, a quick check of who said what.
माननीय अध्यक्ष जी, मैं आपकी अनुज्ञा से समान नागरिक संहिता उत्तराखंड विधेयक 2024 को पुनः स्थापित करता हूँ।
यूसीसी लागू करने की बात चुनाव से पहले क्यों उठ रही है? इनके पास 10 साल थे। 10 साल तक क्या कर रहे थे? तो इनकी कोई भी प्लानिंग और कोई भी नीति और राजनीति, ये सिर्फ राजनीति से प्रेरित होती है कि इलेक्शन को ध्यान में रखते हुए ये सब बातें करते हैं। आज लोकसभा इलेक्शन है तो ये यूसीसी की बात कर रहे हैं। जब जब इनको लगता है कि हमें पोलराइजेशन का बेनिफिट किसी इलेक्शन में लेना है, चाहे वो राम मंदिर का डिसीजन हो, चाहे वो कश्मीर में 370 का मसला हो, चाहे सीए का मसला हो, तो मैं ये कह सकता हूं कि राजनीति से प्रेरित बयान है ये। लोकसभा इलेक्शन सामने है, ये सिर्फ एक शगुफा छोड़ना चाहते हैं ताकि लोगों के मन में, किसी के मन में भय आ जाए और किसी के मन में विश्वास आ जाए।
Now, the UCC draft, ladies and gentlemen, is a 800-page document. There is a lot to talk about, but we are narrowing down what we are talking about this evening. Maybe we can have another discussion tomorrow evening as well. But today we are narrowing down to live-in relationships and the laws that will regulate live-in relationships in the state of Uttarakhand. Are they even practical? Is it moral policing? Is it actually a safety tool to protect women who live in relationships? My guest this evening, Dharendra Tayal, is a BJP leader. Shalini Ali is the national convener of the women's wing of the RSS. Nilesh Tribhuvan is a senior lawyer. Ranjana Kumari is an activist. Sanjay Hegde is a senior advocate. Thank you all very much for joining us. Ranjana Kumari, I'm going to start with you. What's your view, particularly on the way live-in relationships will be regulated in the state of Uttarakhand? Do you see it as moral policing?
Well, all the three that you mentioned, moral policing as well as trying to regulate something which is totally, a kind of human behavior where two people fall in love and they start living together. Young people, it's not necessarily people who are middle-aged or something. A lot of young people are living together, not wanting to get married. This is also a new trend in our society, going on for quite some time, because women don't want to live a subjugated life. So they don't want to get into this kind of, marital bond, which put a lot of pressure on them. And also to not only to try to regulate, I mean, it's a very, you rightly said, very lengthy piece of and very complicated piece of legislation. When I was just trying to, it's not just 800 pages. The way each thing has been tried to define, of course, has been under the supervision of a judge. So one can expect the length of the whole document, but at the same time trying to penalize. If you don't register within a month, then you have to pay 10,000 rupees to 25,000 rupees fine. And also, in what way, I am not able to still figure out which way it is protecting women, because all the issues that women face in live-in relations have not been addressed. You know what? Just by registering with the registrar and seeking his permission, not only you register, the registrar will decide whether you can live in or not together, and then he will grant the permission. He or she will grant the permission for you to register it. And then after that, you can live in. Now, within 1 month, how many young people, old people, middle-aged people can decide to live together, and then start living together. And after within a month, they must rush and register themselves. Okay. Otherwise, they'll face even imprisonment. I mean, you don't legislate social relationships like that. Human relations, love, you fall in love. And that's why you live with each other. So I don't know how many of the people who have really drafted this understand what this whole idea of live-in relationship is. Have they ever lived in, or have they seen people living in?
The fact is, Ranjana Kumari, the fact is that the panel that has drafted the UCC for Uttarakhand sought opinions from people across the state. And they say that they have factored in the opinions of the people of the state before giving this draft to the government of the day for it to be tabled in the assembly. So they say they have sought the opinion of people. Shalini Ali, there is a difference between marriage and live-in relationships, right? I'm choosing to live in with someone. Why should I register myself? My relationship? Why should I register the breakup? Does it
Shreya,
make any sense? Why should I seek parental consent?
I'll just tell you.
If I had to do all of this, एक मिनट शालिनी, if I had to do all of this, I would have gotten married ना. मम्मी पापा का consent भी चाहिए, government के साथ registration भी चाहिए, divorce होने पे भी registration चाहिए. I would have gotten married. So the way I read it is that the government wants to essentially discourage live-in relationships. कि नहीं चाहिए, Indian society में नहीं चलेगा, हमारे यहाँ नहीं चलेगा, और चलना है तो we'll make it so tough for you, you'll not be able to do it.
See, Shreya, there are 2-3 things that come into my mind. You may call me orthodox, you may call me a part of that society which is very orthodox. Although I'm very progressive, I've traveled all over the world, I speak my mind even on Islam, and a lot of people are there gunning out for me because I'm too progressive. There are 2 things. One, live-in relationship. Let me put on record, last year, 14th February, There was a brutal murder of a young girl in New Delhi where she was butchered. She was butchered into pieces, put into a restaurant fridge, and days later, her boyfriend is caught murdering her. So, number one, let's talk about the safety of girls. आप प्यार करते हैं, दो लोग मिलते हैं, एक दूसरे से मिलते हैं, 2-4 घंटे के लिए मिलते हैं. You both are at the best behavior. You both are at the best behavior. That goes into a live-in relationship where पहले शुरू में everything is very rosy. It's like a honeymoon. You are living, you are having a honeymoon with no ticket required. So let us get back to our traditional ways. You want to have a live-in relationship? Good. Very good. You don't want to jump into a marriage? Fine. You want to take your time? Perfectly well. But number one, are you really sure that you want to go in for a live-in relationship? If you are, there is no harm in registering yourself. Number one. And number two, if you still want to take time, you can spend more time to be together. You can be with each other for say 10 hours in a day, 12 hours in a day. कोई नहीं रोकता है यार. No one knows who is coming into an apartment and who is going out of an apartment. You may not be living together, but you might be living those moments together also. So let youngsters understand
Shalini,
the difference of the importance of a live-in relationship. Firstly, it will definitely guarantee a lot of security to girls because, of course, abhi tak it was that okay, the
how?
Supreme Court has also
How?
allowed it. There's no harm in it. Now it's serious business. You have to register it. So are you really all
No.
out into it? I
Okay.
agree to the fact you have marriages that go
Again,
out, you go in for a divorce after 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So live in relationship ka kya hai? But let's start thinking about relationships, security, safety. Let us start thinking
but
about the
no.
sanctity
If
of the society
if
also along
oh,
with it.
no, you're okay. Here's the point. The point that you are trying to make is that this is also about the safety of women. And I do remember Sanjay Hegde, when the entire Shraddha Walkar Aftab case had happened, we were all talking about why there are no mechanisms to protect women in live-in relationships, right? All of us spoke about it. Now, here's the government bringing in some sort of regulation. Now, is it harebrained? To me, it does sound harebrained. But they're saying at least hum kuch to kar rahe hain. Here, you always are criticizing us every time a case like this has happened for the government not doing enough to protect women. Now, here we are protecting women. My point is, do you see this piece of legislation as being as offering any sort of protection to women? Because I don't see it. Maybe I'm missing something.
No, I don't think you're missing anything. In fact, I was just reading the section, and I don't think that BJP knows what it has done. The BJP essentially has done two things with it. One is it has equated a live-in relationship with a marriage, roughly. Yeah, those who do not want to formalize relationships are being required to formalize relationships. This is straight out hitting at the younger generation who says that, look, our conscience doesn't want us to get into any formalized relationship. You are. Now, the second thing is, please look at the definition of live-in relationship. Means a relationship between a man and a woman, hereinafter referred to as partners who cohabit in a shared household through a relationship in the nature of marriage. Now, to my mind, this will equally apply to every middle-aged man who's installed a mistress in a separate house, and that too becomes a live-in relationship. So I do know that a large portion of the successful mercantile class which backs the BJP has more than one household that it supports. All of them will also be registered. I just want to watch the fun. And there's so much work coming ahead for lawyers. Thank you, BJP.
धरेंद्र दयाल, thank you BJP. The lawyers are saying thank you very much. आप तो draft ही ऐसा ले आए हो that will be challenged in court. Who are you to tell young people register with the government? The government is not a big brother.
And the old people, please
there is something called privacy that the courts.
For the old people, please register your
there is something called privacy. Chali, Abhi,
Okay.
let's talk about young people only. Mr. Tayal, fact is, there is something called privacy. The constitution guarantees all of us privacy. Who is the government now to suddenly tell us live in relationship? अब तो हम इसको शादी की तरह ही बना के रहेंगे. Because we don't want live in relationships. And you better register, and you register breakups as well. And if you're under 21, मम्मी पापा से पूछ के आओ. ये क्या logic क्या है? It'll be challenged in court.
Okay. So the good part that for once Mr. Hegde is thanking the BJP. So thank you, Mr. Hegde, for thanking the BJP. I think what I expected today was that, just taking one step back, what I expected was that the way the entire UCC is, at least 3 people on this panel, I expected to give it a standing ovation. That is the 3 women on the panel. But nevertheless, let's put that aside and come to the question that you have given to me.
नहीं, Mr. Tayal, अब आपने बात बोली है तो सुनिए. Mr. Tayal, I will tell you this. You didn't hear my introduction. You weren't being a good student. You didn't hear my introduction. I stood up and I didn't give a standing ovation, but I did say that the fact that the UCC is giving equal inheritance rights to men and women as a good thing. You need that in Uttarakhand, you need it across the country, and God knows every third house in Dehradun, there is an inheritance conflict that is currently underway. So, great. I am not completely dissing the UCC. There are some good points to it and you'll applaud it. But frankly, the live-in relationship and the regulations around live-in relationships simply don't make sense to me. It's as simple as that. Anyhow, complete your point.
Let me come there. So I think the way what I have heard till now, I think we are seeing a generation gap here. Sorry to say that, but my feel is we really don't understand what a live-in relationship is. We're saying a girl and a boy, they fall in love and they are in a live-in relationship. No, it doesn't happen like that. It is actually an announcement where you are saying, okay, we've gone around for long enough. Now we are moving in together. It's an announcement. It actually is an announcement to the world. I don't give a damn, we're moving in together. So it is not something which is just going to happen when we say, they fall in love and they have to go and register. How does that happen? It doesn't happen like that. These things, dating goes on for months. Yeah.
Mr. Tayal, what happens when young couples don't want to scream from rooftops that they are moving in together? There are young couples who live away from their parents in different cities. They don't want their parents to know the status of their relationship. They want to be quiet about it. They don't want to talk about it. If they wanted to talk about it, they would have gotten married or engaged. है ना? अब वो लोग बात नहीं करना चाहते. Use the government to tell us नहीं जबरदस्ती now you register.
No. To your henna, I'm saying nahi hai. Because I am ready to move in, like another panelist said, I'm ready to move in and see whether this works for both of us. That does not mean marriage could be something in the future, but rather than going through the whole rigmarole of seeking a divorce, here I can inform somebody and say, okay, we have broken up. Thank you very much. But that protection part is extremely important. You yourself quoted that case. When we want the protections, when we want the, a child is born out of that, and we want to give that child some rights, but we do not want to register it. Now, if you want to protect all that, I cannot have it and eat it too. So here is the government stepping in and saying, okay,
so Nilesh,
even if you moved in together, it is an announcement, and nowhere does it say that the registrar is immediately going to shoot out a letter to mummy papa and say, look, your adult children have moved in together. But somewhere at a younger age, if that is required, there should be no problem. And today we are living in the India of 2024. In the India of 2024, the parents are also supposed to understand if the children are young enough. And if you are beyond
before I say anything, 2 of our panelists want to say something. I have something to say, but okay. So point is, my opinion doesn't count here because everyone has an opinion on the story. Time is short. Ranjana Kumari first and then Mr. Hegde.
Does not. Registration.
Mr. Tayal,
registration trying to provide protection. How do you equate registering and protection? How does that work? And secondly, the whole question is of social stigma for women. This is whole question of discrimination. inequality in rights and protection. I mean, we are just mixing things by just going to a registrar's office, getting the permission to register within a month. How does it ensure protection? How did, the case that was just quoted, that she was cut into pieces? This is the whole issue of inequality between men and women and rights and protection. This is this is rights to get protected to women is not being granted by registering the relationship. In fact, it's a mockery of the whole thing. It's just not,
Mr. Hegde?
You are not ensuring anything. In fact, what you are doing in a way, you are, and why are we talking about young women only? Why are we not talking about all these middle-aged men who are living with all these married women and all these politicians and bureaucrats and all those people? I mean, they are. How are you going to provide protection to the youngsters who get trapped by them and start pushed to live with them? I know of many who are just suffering because
Sanjay Hegde, you want to come in? Okay. Ranjana,
what kind of a protection are you providing?
I understand what you are saying. Where is the protection? Achha, yes. I get that question. That our question has not been answered. Very quickly, Mr. Hegde, and then I'll quickly go to Tribhuvan. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Hegde.
Quickly, if a young boy and a young person from Uttarakhand goes into the software industry in Bangalore and starts living in there, even then that person has to register. Oh my God, what are you doing?
Yes.
If young people who want to be independent have broken away from their parents or they are living separately, you want to know whether they're living together in Pune or in Ahmedabad or someplace like that? Come on. This is entirely extraterritorial.
Tribhuvan? Tribhuvan, one of the arguments that Mr. Tayal was saying is essentially, he said, is you have to take the good with the bad. The fact is that any child born in a live-in relationship will be considered legitimate. And if that live-in relationship is registered, that makes it so much easier for us to recognize the child as legitimate. Ab uske saath, there are some unpalatable things that are coming with the territory. Deal with it.
Okay, my answer is twofold. Firstly, let me draw everybody's attention to one Supreme Court judgment, which is Mamta Rani versus Union of India, which was the similar issue the Honorable Supreme Court, Honorable Chief Justice of India has dealt with, whether the registration of the live-in relationships are mandatory or not. That issue has been particularly decided by the Supreme Court on 20th March 2023. Wherein the Supreme Court has taken a view that it is not necessary at all. The petition was dismissed outrightly. If you want, just go on Google and see the observations of the Supreme Court. I'll not take everybody's time on that. So I feel this is absolutely unwarranted thing to register live-in relationships and plus the breakups. Now coming back to the questions what you've asked me about the protection. What happens to the child which is born out of the legitimate or illegitimate relationships? So forget about the word about the legitimate, illegitimate, the definition, just ignore it. But the law, Indian laws, including Hindu Marriage Act, CRPC, Domestic Violence Act, the rights of the legitimate child and the illegitimate child are similar. Under Section 20 of Domestic Violence Act, all the rights are similar. There is no differentiation law has made, even in Hindu Marriage Act, even under CRPC 125, whether the child is legitimate, illegitimate, he is entitled for the maintenance from his parents. So all those things are already there. So there is no need to add one more layer to it than say so that you register, then only you will get a protection. And however, moving forward, so this subject, the Constitution has already been divided, the powers have been conferred. The concurrent list, union list, state list, and the concurrent list is there. This is a subject matter of a concurrent list. When the concurrent in a concurrent list under Article 254, if you see, it specifically says so that if the central has already taken into consideration the similar kind of an act and the protection, you need not need to make a new law. Even if you make it, assuming that even if you make it, what will prevail in that scenario? The central act will prevail. Now you have a domestic violence act. What is the need of this? And let me give you one more numbers. This is important for you guys. I've gone through the websites and done certain research, because the entire thing Mr. Tayal was also saying is for the safety of women, safety of women. There are 991 cases are getting registered under 498A. There are more than 300, 400 cases on Domestic Violence Act are getting registered every year, and another 30, 40. So 1,000 cases, more than 1,000 cases getting registered every single year. You know the pendency of these cases? There are more than 10,000 cases which are pending. If you're talking about women's safety, add more judges, comply with the conditions of Domestic Violence Act, which provides the protection officers. If you do that, automatically the number of the cases will reduce, and the purpose to serve women and women's safety, it gets resolved automatically.
Okay, and therefore, Shalini, I'll come back, because you are the one who was raising the point about this being a measure for women's safety. I'm quickly going to go to Shalini Ali. Shalini Ali, let's take, just as an anecdote and as an example, let's take the case of Shraddha Walkar and Aftab, right? Say,
Perfect.
if Maharashtra had the UCC, say this relationship was registered, would that have saved Shraddha Walkar? Given the fact, hear me out, that Shraddha Walkar has actually gone to the police when she was being abused and beaten up to register a complaint, and then she came back and withdrew the complaint. The police never bothered to check kya ho raha hai, kya nahi ho raha hai, and ultimately what happened. So it's not like laws don't exist in this country. Laws to protect women exist in this country. You don't need another layer, and a registration, to my mind, would not have saved Shraddha Walkar.
See, what you're saying is absolutely right, that there are laws in the land. But what about the execution? What about, more than the execution, the fact that Shraddha went to the police? Yes, she did go to the police. She did report it. At the same time, she did want to still stay on into that same relationship. There is a taboo also that is there with live-in relationships in a girl's life. Are you understanding? That a girl always wants to, whether it is a live-in relationship, whether it is a marriage. I mean, you look at the number of cases, like what our learned counsel just even said. There are so many cases that are still lined up for domestic violence. And yet there are so many which are not even filed.
The point he is making is you don't need another layer. You don't need something as harebrained as registering a live-in relationship. That is not offering them a layer of security. That's the point that we are trying to make.
Totally agreed. But more than the layer of this, you will try and understand to the psyche that it is going to run in the youngsters' minds. I mean, come on. Today, if I want to go to go in for a live-in relationship with a law so strict, it's going to run on my psyche also. I'm going to think about it. Okay, I have to go and register it. I have to take permission from my parents. Come on, yaar, you are below 21. You, as it is, have to take permission from your parents to get married.
That is
okay.
There are
a lot of things that are
as it is. Then you are saying, Suhasini, then you are telling me that it essentially is dissuading younger couples from living in. That's essentially what you're telling me. That is what the law is trying to do, Mr. Tayal. ये moral policing है. हमारे देश में और हमारे स्टेट में ये नहीं चलेगा, Mr. Tayal. That is because that is बिल्कुल. For me, that is the message of these regulations, Mr. Tayal.
No, so Shreya, already you called it harebrained, and you've already said that ये तो नहीं चलेगा. Your judgment is already there. But nevertheless, coming back, couple of interesting things. One, an oxymoron we heard here, where Mr. Hegde said this is equated roughly. So I don't know how does it get equated roughly to marriage. But at the same time, he says, what about all those mistresses who are there? So
what do you mean equated roughly? Register a breakup, ask mummy, papa, maintenance clause, child will be legitimate. This is just like marriage only, no? What is the difference between marriage and live-in?
I'm coming there. I'm going to give you a very interesting another input also. Till now, we've only been talking about women protection. Let me tell you, the former DGP has said it is going to provide men protection. That is another interesting example. I'm living in with somebody. We break up, and I accuse the man that he promised me of marriage, and now this is amounting to rape, and the guy is in jail. So it is equitable now on both
Acha.
sides. Let's understand that also.
Okay.
Second point.
That's a good point. That's a good point, Mr. Tayal. That's a good point. I have 10 seconds. My producer is telling me I'm over. 10 seconds, complete your point, I'll wrap the show.
The important part, somebody said, I think Ranjana ji said, that stigma on women. Let's understand, like I said, generation gap, what are we talking about? If I'm moving in, I'm modern enough to move in with somebody and say I'm living in, and then we say, there's a stigma attached. Come on. If there's a stigma attached, I'm talking about a stigma, who's stigmatizing?
Of course there's a stigma.
Here is a government that is saying, we are modern enough to recognize what you're doing, we'll help you, nobody will take you for a ride, have 5 mistresses across the place or married 3 times and telling me, look, I'm living in with you. It is not going to happen. That is the protection, where the protection is being checked by the registrar. Okay.
Mr. Tayal, the registration is not offering protection, but we leave it there. This is an interesting chat, but unfortunately the other show has to start. Thank you very much, Mr. Tayal, for joining us. Shalini Ali, thank you very much. Nilesh Tribhuvan, thank you. Ranjana Kumari ji, Sanjay Hegde, thank you all very much for joining us. With that, I'm slipping into a break. My colleague Shreya is joining you up next with all the day's headlines. Do stay with us.